On a spring morning in 2006, in the quiet town of Medicine Hat, Canada, the door to a well-kept house opened to reveal a horrifying scene. 3 bodies lying in pools of blood. Police immediately launched a search for the missing 12-year-old daughter, believing she had been kidnapped by a brutal killer. The entire town prayed for the little girl's safe return. But 24 hours later, when Jasmine Richardson was found, the truth sent shockwaves through all of Canada. The girl wasn't a victim. She was the mastermind who had coldly murdered her parents and younger brother to be free to love her 23-year-old boyfriend, who claimed to be a 300-year-old werewolf. Welcome to the Case Files, where we dive deep into the world's most shocking criminal cases, analyzing every detail to understand the nature of crime and human psychology. Today, we're stepping into one of the most heartbreaking and disturbing cases in Canadian history, a family tragedy that forced the entire nation to question the boundaries between youth and criminal responsibility, the dangers of the virtual world, and how a 12-year-old girl could become a cold-blooded killer. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Richardson Family Massacre, when 12-year-old love became a blood-soaked tragedy. The case that made Jasmine Richardson the youngest person ever convicted of multiple murders in Canadian history. The horrifying morning on a peaceful street. Monday, April 23, 2006. The brilliant spring sunshine bathed the quiet suburban streets of Medicine Hat, a small city in Alberta, Canada. This was a place where people knew each other, where neighbors greeted each other warmly, and where children played freely on lush green lawns. That morning, a neighborhood boy innocently ran over to the Richardson family home to invite his best friend, 8-year-old Jacob Richardson, to play as usual. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. A strange, uneasy feeling made the boy peer through the window, and he froze. Inside, a body lay motionless on the floor in a pool of blood. Panicked, the boy ran home to tell his mother, and an emergency 911 call was immediately made. When police arrived at the scene, what they witnessed was far more horrifying than the initial report. On the first floor, 2 bodies of Mark Richardson, 42, and Deborah Richardson, 48, lay in a sea of blood. Deborah had been stabbed 12 times brutally, while Mark, who had apparently tried to fight back in desperation, had been stabbed 24 times, with a screwdriver lying next to his body, the final weapon he used to defend his family. But the horror didn't stop there. When they checked upstairs, police discovered the body of 8-year-old Jacob Richardson, also known as Tyler Jacob, lying quietly on his bed with a deep gash across his throat and multiple stab wounds to his head and torso. 3 members of one family had been savagely murdered in their own home, but one person was missing: the eldest daughter, Jasmine Richardson, 12 years old. Had the girl been kidnapped by the killer? Or was there a darker truth waiting to be revealed? The Richardson family and the first cracks. Before the tragedy, the Richardson family was the picture of a happy middle-class Canadian family. Mark Richardson was a dedicated father who worked hard to support his family. Deborah was a loving mother who always cared for her children. Young Jacob was energetic, adorable, and loved by the entire neighborhood. And Jasmine, the girl once described as gentle, cheerful, and friendly, gradually changed as she entered her teenage years. She began to drift away from her family, immersing herself in her own world. Jasmine became attracted to Gothic culture, a subculture that favored darkness and mystery. Her wardrobe consisted entirely of black clothes. She wore heavy eye makeup with sharp black liner, and she frequently listened to punk rock and heavy metal music. Mark and Deborah initially thought this was just a normal rebellious phase of adolescence, but Jasmine's changes became increasingly extreme. She spent most of her time on the internet, immersed in the virtual world on social media sites, vampirefreaks.com and Nexopia, forums for people who loved vampire culture and goth. It was in this dark virtual world that a shadow entered Jasmine's life and changed it forever. The distance between Jasmine and her parents grew wider. Mark and Deborah feared their daughter was going down the wrong path, and they tried to intervene by controlling her internet time and checking her friends. But for a 12-year-old craving freedom and self-assertion, these actions weren't care. They were oppression. The family relationship became tense. Arguments became more frequent. Jasmine felt isolated and misunderstood. And in that mental state, she found a soulmate online, a 23-year-old man who claimed to be a 300-year-old werewolf. Jeremy Steinke, the werewolf from the shadows. The person Jasmine met on vampirefreaks.com was Jeremy Steinke, 23, a young man with a deeply troubled past. His mother was a severe alcoholic. His father left early. He grew up in an environment lacking love, frequently witnessing his mother involved with different men. At school, with his eccentric appearance and withdrawn personality, Steinke became a target of bullying and teasing. The accumulated mental pain drove him to attempt suicide. To escape harsh reality, Steinke built himself a fantasy world. He became heavily obsessed with vampires and werewolves, even believing himself to be a 300-year-old werewolf, powerful and immortal. He often wore a small vial of blood around his neck and behaved like a supernatural creature. When Jasmine, a rebellious 12-year-old feeling abandoned by the world, met Steinke, she was immediately drawn to him. To Jasmine, he wasn't a failed 23-year-old with psychological issues. He was a mysterious, powerful being, someone who understood the loneliness and anger inside her. They quickly found common ground through shared interests in rock music, goth style, and mysticism. The relationship developed through online conversations under the usernames Runaway Devil, Jasmine, and Soul Eater, Steinke. They soon met in person at a rock concert, and the twisted relationship officially began. But what happened when her parents discovered this relationship? The forbidden love and the blood-stained plan. When they discovered their 12-year-old daughter was dating a 23-year-old with an unsettling appearance and mindset, Mark and Deborah were horrified. They vehemently objected, forbade Jasmine from seeing Steinke, and confiscated her computer and phone. But this action, though stemming from love and a desire to protect their daughter, became the last straw. Instead of separating the couple, the prohibition pushed them in an even more extreme and dangerous direction. Deprived of communication, Jasmine and Steinke found ways to connect through friends' emails and continued to immerse themselves on vampirefreaks.com. In this private space, Jasmine's anger toward her parents turned into hatred. The most shocking evidence was found in their emails and messages. In one email, Jasmine wrote under the username Runaway Devil, "Babe, I have a plan. It starts with me killing both of them. I won't have parents anymore, and we can be together forever." This wasn't a passing thought. The plan was discussed in detail. Jasmine outlined how Steinke would break into the house, while she would handle her younger brother, whom she feared would become a witness. Steinke, with his already unstable psyche and desire to play the hero for his young girlfriend, fully embraced the idea. He wrote on his blog, "Their sacrifice will be great vengeance for our love. Finally, they will pay the price in blood and eternal silence." No one in their virtual circle of friends took these threats seriously. They thought these were just impulsive, empty words from two people immersed in goth culture. That was a deadly indifference. The night before the tragedy, on April 22, 2006, the couple watched the movie Natural-Born Killers together, a film about a young couple committing a series of brutal murders. After watching the film, they parted ways. Everything was set. The horrifying plan was ready to be executed. The night of the massacre and chilling callousness. In the early hours of April 23, 2006, Jeremy Steinke, dressed in black and driven by a friend named Casey Lancaster, 99, arrived at the Richardson home. According to plan, he broke in through a basement window. The first confrontation occurred with Mark Richardson. Mark, likely awakened by the noise, encountered Steinke. A life-or-death struggle ensued. Mark, in a final effort to protect his family, fought back fiercely with a screwdriver, but couldn't overcome a strong 23-year-old in a killing frenzy. Steinke stabbed Mark 24 times until he collapsed. The commotion woke Deborah Richardson, who rushed downstairs. When she saw the horrifying scene, she had no chance to react. Steinke lunged forward and stabbed the unfortunate woman 12 times. According to Steinke's later confession to an undercover officer, in his final moments, Mark whispered, "Why?" Steinke coldly replied, "Because your daughter wanted it that way." While Steinke committed the savage act downstairs, Jasmine carried out her part. She went upstairs to her brother Jacob's room. The 8-year-old boy was sleeping soundly, completely unaware of the nightmare unfolding just below him. Jasmine coldly used a knife to slash a deep wound across his throat, ending the boy's life. The act of a sister killing her own brother was the most shocking detail of the entire case, showing that moral degradation had reached its ultimate depth. But after committing the crime, what did they do? Did they feel remorse? The callousness after the crime. After committing the murders, the couple left the scene, leaving behind 3 bodies and a blood-soaked house. But instead of being frightened or running away, they behaved strangely. Just hours after the heinous crime, Jasmine and Steinke went to Steinke's friend's house. There, witnesses saw them laughing, kissing, and bragging about what they had just done. Steinke recounted that the victims were gutted like fish, while Jasmine said her brother gurgled after his throat was cut. The absolute callousness and lack of remorse showed a terrifying mental state, treating human life like a joke to satisfy their sick relationship. Casey Lancaster, who drove Steinke to the Richardson home, later drove both of them to flee to Leader, Saskatchewan. Lancaster also helped destroy evidence by cleaning Steinke's truck and disposing of a large knife. The net closes in. While the search for Jasmine Richardson was ongoing with the assumption she was a victim, investigators at the scene began noticing unusual signs. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting the killer could have entered easily or was let in by someone inside. The breakthrough in the investigation came from analyzing Jasmine's computer and online accounts. Emails, messages, and posts painted a completely different picture. A girl full of hatred, a meticulously discussed murder plan, and a sick relationship as the main motive. Particularly, police found a stick figure drawing in Jasmine's school locker depicting her family being killed. This was the earliest evidence that made police shift their investigation. The kidnapping theory collapsed. Arrest warrants were issued for both Jasmine Richardson and Jeremy Steinke. Nearly 24 hours after the massacre, on April 24, 2006, police received a tip and tracked them to Leader, Saskatchewan, about 130 kilometers from Medicine Hat. The couple was arrested in a truck without resistance. After being arrested, Jasmine remained silent, while Steinke couldn't hide his bragging nature. Police placed an undercover officer in Steinke's cell. Without suspicion, Steinke recounted the entire crime, describing the killing of Jasmine's parents in gruesome detail, comparing it to cleaning a fish. The confession became the most damning evidence against him. See, 2 trials, 2 historic sentences. Due to age differences, Jasmine and Steinke were tried separately with completely different legal regulations. Jeremy Steinke's trial. In November 2008, Steinke, 25, faced 3 counts of first-degree murder. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: messages exchanged with Jasmine, violent posts online, witness testimony from those who saw them after the crime, and most importantly, his confession to the undercover officer. The jury didn't take long to reach a verdict. Steinke was convicted on all 3 counts and received the maximum sentence under Canadian law: life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Jasmine Richardson's trial. Jasmine's trial was more complex. Under Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act, a person under 14 cannot be tried as an adult. Defense lawyers argued Jasmine was manipulated by Steinke, and her messages were just products of an immature imagination. However, prosecutors successfully argued that the level of detail in the plan and Jasmine's active role showed she fully understood her actions. In July 2007, Jasmine, then 13, was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, becoming the youngest person in Canadian history to be convicted of multiple murders. Due to legal regulations, the maximum sentence she could receive was 10 years, a number many people considered too lenient. The sentence included 4 years in a secure psychiatric hospital, followed by over 4 years under community supervision. Throughout the trial, Jasmine never once apologized to her parents and brother. Jasmine was diagnosed with conduct disorder while serving her sentence. Casey Lancaster was charged as an accessory, later released on $25,000 bail secured by her mother's house. Another 17-year-old girl was also charged, but later pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of obstruction of justice. Life after prison. The fates of the 2 killers diverged. Jeremy Steinke. Currently serving his sentence in Edmonton, he changed his name to Jackson May to avoid attention. He will be eligible to apply for parole around 2033, when he'll be nearly 50. In 2012, he abandoned his appeal of the conviction. The eternal love he and Jasmine vowed fell apart immediately after arrest, when both began blaming each other. Jasmine Richardson. During her sentence, Jasmine underwent intensive rehabilitation and psychological therapy. In fall 2011, she began studying at Mount Royal University in Calgary, near the end of her time at the psychiatric facility. She was released from the psychiatric hospital in late 2011, and by October 2012, reports showed her rehabilitation was progressing positively. Mental health experts assessed her risk of reoffending as very low. She reportedly graduated from university and showed genuine remorse for her crimes. In May 2016, after completing her 10-year sentence, Jasmine was fully released at age 22. She then lived with a roommate and had a full-time job. By 2020, her criminal record was completely expunged. Under Canadian law, her new identity and current life are strictly protected from public scrutiny. There's speculation she still lives in Calgary under a new identity. The Richardson family case has closed legally, but it left scars that will never heal in the Medicine Hat community and across Canada. This remains one of the most controversial cases regarding Canada's youth justice system. Many believe the 10-year sentence was too lenient for 3 counts of first-degree murder, and that giving Jasmine a new identity with a clean record is unfair to the victims. Particularly concerning is that she could work with children without anyone knowing her past, since the criminal record was expunged. This case is a harsh wake-up call about the gaps in family communication, about the frightening influence of the internet and violent culture on young minds, and about the darkness that can exist even in the most innocent-seeming children. Questions we must ask ourselves. Can a 12-year-old truly understand the full consequences of their actions? Should the legal system protect a killer's identity just because they committed the crime as a minor? How can parents detect early warning signs in their children's virtual world? The tragedy in Medicine Hat will forever remain a dark chapter in criminal history, a painful testament showing that when young love is twisted by hatred and delusion, It can lead to unimaginably devastating consequences. If you found this content valuable, please subscribe to the channel, hit like, and share, so these stories continue to be told as a reminder of the importance of proper care, communication, and supervision within families. Leave a comment to share your thoughts on this case. See you in the next case on the Case Files. Stay safe and stay vigilant.